Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something really fascinating, the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
You reached out and you shared an introduction to this ancient text with us. And I think what you're really curious about is what does it have to say about modern life?
Yeah.
How can we apply this ancient wisdom?
Right.
So let's just jump right into it. Imagine you're on a battlefield.
Okay.
Not like with swords and shields.
Yeah.
But the kind we face every day, all those tough decisions, the weight of responsibilities, and just that like ever-present question of meaning, like what's it all about?
Right.
That's the setting the Bhagavad Gita drops us into. It's a conversation between a warrior named Arjuna and his charioteer, Krishna.
Okay.
But here's the twist. Krishna also happens to be an incarnation of God.
Oh, wow.
Talk about intense, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But here's the question we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
Okay.
Could this ancient text actually be like a guidebook for navigating the chaos of the 21st century?
What's remarkable about the Gita is that it really goes beyond its historical and cultural context.
Oh, interesting.
It's not confined to like a specific religion or philosophy.
Right.
It speaks to these universal human experiences, those internal battles that we all face, regardless of who we are, where we come from.
So it's not just like a dusty old text on a shelf somewhere, but something that speaks to us like right here, right now.
Exactly. The Gita uses this metaphor of a battlefield to represent our inner struggles.
I can see.
And it's a powerful metaphor because it allows us to connect with the text on a personal level. We all have our own Kurukshetra.
Our own inner battlefield.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be relevant.
Yeah.
But let's get into the specifics.
Yep.
I mean, this introduction you shared.
Yeah.
It dives deep into this concept of consciousness.
Right.
And the Gita doesn't mess around. It puts consciousness front and center as like the core of existence.
It describes consciousness as eternal and indestructible.
Wow.
The very essence of who we are. It goes beyond our physical bodies, beyond our thoughts and emotions.
Wow. So like deeper than all that.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that modern science is beginning to kind of explore these ideas too.
Really? So the ancient wisdom of the Gita is being backed up by modern science.
In some ways, yes.
Interesting.
I mean, for example, like quantum physics.
Right.
Quantum physics is revealing this interconnectedness of all things, suggesting there's like a deeper reality beyond our physical perceptions. And neuroscience is delving into like the mysteries of the mind, exploring consciousness in ways we never thought possible before.
So we have these ancient spiritual teachings, and modern science is kind of like converging on this idea of consciousness as being pretty darn important.
Yeah.
But how does that actually play out in our everyday lives?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What does it mean to, recognize consciousness as this fundamental truth?
Well, you see, if our true nature is this eternal consciousness, then all those things that we tend to cling to, our possessions, our achievements, even our identities, they become less significant.
It's insignificant. How so?
It's like we're looking beyond the surface, recognizing there's something much deeper and more enduring.
So in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about what to buy, how to look, who to be, the Gita is offering like a different perspective, a way to see beyond all that superficial stuff.
Precisely. The Gita encourages us to shift our focus from the external to the internal, from the fleeting to the eternal. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating.
Liberate?
Yeah, it allows us to kind of detach from those external things that don't truly matter and to find peace and fulfillment within ourselves.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we're not just souls trapped in these physical bodies, but something much bigger, more interconnected. But then there's this whole concept of karma, actions and consequences. It can feel kind of heavy,
Yeah.
Like, are we destined to just repeat the same patterns over and over again?
Well, the Gita presents karma not as a punishment system, but as a universal principle. It's like this law of cause and effect that governs our lives. Every action, every thought, every intention creates this ripple effect. Shaping our future experiences.
So it's like every choice we make is planting a seed that will eventually bear fruit.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Either sweet or sour.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Gita emphasizes that we have the power to choose the seeds we plant, the actions that we take.
Right.
It's not about being passive or resigned to fate, but about taking responsibility for our choices. And understanding their consequences.
That makes it feel less like a predetermined destiny. And more like a call to conscious action.
Exactly.
But the Gita also talks about performing your duty, your Dharma, without being attached to the outcome.
Right.
How does that fit in with the whole karma thing?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so wait. If our actions have consequences, shouldn't we care about the results?
The Gita encourages us to act with intention. To do our best in every situation, but to let go of the need to control the outcome.
And control it.
It's about focusing on the purity of our actions rather than getting caught up in the desire for specific results.
Okay, so it's not about being passive.
Right.
Or ignoring the results of our actions, but about finding that balance between effort and acceptance.
Exactly.
Right.
Krishna, in the Gita, he calls this nishkama karma.
Nishkama karma.
Yeah, selfless action without attachment to the fruits of our labor. And this teaching is so relevant today, especially in our achievement-oriented culture, where we're constantly striving for success and recognition. So it's not about giving up on our goals, but about approaching them with a different mindset.
I see.
Focusing on the process rather than just the outcome.
That's such a powerful idea. But wait, if we're not supposed to be attached to the results of our actions, wouldn't that lead to apathy or inaction?
That's a valid concern. And the Gita addresses this directly. You know, Krishna, he warns against inaction, emphasizing that life is dynamic and it requires our active participation. Avoiding responsibility or withdrawing from the world actually leads to stagnation and suffering. He's calling us to engage in life fully, to take action, to contribute to the world around us.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between detached action and responsible engagement.
Exactly.
It's like we're being called to be both present and proactive, contributing our unique talents and abilities to the world. Without getting caught up in ego or the need for control.
And that's where the concept of samskaras comes in.
Samskaras, those are the mental impressions formed by our past actions.
Exactly.
So the ones that kind of linger in our subconscious and influence how we behave.
Imagine samskaras as grooves on a vinyl record. Each action, thought, experience creates a groove. And those grooves, they influence the music that plays.
I see.
Our patterns of behavior, our reactions, our tendencies.
So are we basically stuck playing the same old song over and over again? Because of these samskaras? Is there any way to change the tune?
That's the beauty of the Gita. It offers a way out. It suggests that we can cleanse negative samskaras and cultivate positive ones. Through awareness and spiritual practices. It's like consciously choosing to play a different song to create new grooves that lead to more positive experiences.
I like that analogy. So it's not just about accepting our past, but actively shaping our future by transforming those ingrained patterns. That's pretty empowering.
It is. It's like we're rewiring our brains. You know, creating new neural pathways.
That lead to more positive and fulfilling experiences.
So it's not just about accepting our past, but like actively shaping our future by transforming those ingrained patterns. That's pretty empowering.
It is. But tell me, how do these samskaras tie into the whole cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that the Gita talks about?
That's a great question.
You know that cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, known as samsara, is directly related to our karma. And those samskaras that we've been talking about. Think of it this way. Our soul, the Atman, journeys through lifetimes, gathering experiences, and creating samskaras. And those samskaras act like a magnetic force.
Oh, okay.
Influencing the conditions of our next life.
So it's like we're carrying a backpack.
Yes.
Filled with like the imprints of our past actions.
Right. And that backpack influences like the terrain we'll encounter.
Exactly.
In our next journey.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Okay.
And the Gita suggests that the ultimate goal is to lighten that backpack.
To lighten it.
You know, to cleanse those negative samskaras so that we can break free from this cycle of samsara and achieve liberation moksha.
Okay, so breaking free from this cycle of rebirth is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But how does understanding this concept
that's a great question.
help us live better lives right now?
Well, you know, recognizing the impermanence of life, of our bodies, even our personalities, can be incredibly freeing. It allows us to let go of attachments, embrace change, and focus on what truly matters.
What truly matters.
Our spiritual growth and evolution.
It's like shifting our perspective from seeing life as like this linear path with a fixed endpoint to like more of a spiral that's constantly evolving and expanding.
Exactly.
So if we're all carrying these karmic backpacks and traveling through this cycle of rebirth, how do we actually start like lightening the load and moving towards liberation?
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that the Gita offers like several paths, right?
Yes, the Gita outlines 4 main paths.
Okay.
Each one offering a different approach to spiritual growth and liberation.
Okay, let's unpack these paths.
Okay.
Starting with Karma Yoga.
Okay.
What's the essence of this path?
Karma Yoga is the path of selfless action.
Selfless action.
It's about dedicating your actions to a higher purpose.
A higher purpose.
To something greater than yourself without being attached to the outcome.
So it's not just about like volunteering or doing good deeds. But about approaching all our actions, even the mundane ones, with a sense of service.
Exactly.
And dedication.
It's about shifting our motivation from what's in it for me to how can I contribute to the well-being of others and the world around me.
It's like transforming every action into an act of love and service.
Yes.
Okay, what about Bhakti Yoga?
Okay.
That one sounds intriguing.
Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion and love.
Devotion and love.
It's about cultivating this like deep and heartfelt connection to the divine.
The divine.
However you conceive of that.
So it's about like opening our hearts and expressing that love through prayer, chanting, singing. Whatever form of worship resonates with us.
Yes. It's about surrendering your ego, your personal desires, and finding fulfillment in that connection to something greater
than ourselves.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be limited to traditional religious practices.
You know, it can manifest as love for nature, love for humanity, or even a specific cause that inspires you.
It's like tapping into that universal love that connects us all.
Yes.
Okay, and what about Jnana Yoga?
Okay.
That one sounds a bit more intellectual.
Jnana Yoga is the path of knowledge and wisdom.
Knowledge and wisdom.
It's about using our intellect to inquire into the nature of reality. To see beyond the illusions of the material world. And connect with our true self.
So it's like a deep dive into self-discovery.
Yeah.
Using our minds to explore like the big questions about life, the universe, everything.
Exactly. Jnana Yoga encourages us to question our assumptions. Challenge our beliefs, seek knowledge from a variety of sources. It's about using our intellect to illuminate the path to liberation.
So it's about using our minds as tools for spiritual growth.
Rather than getting caught up in endless mental chatter. Okay, last but not least. What about Dhyana Yoga? I've heard a lot about meditation lately. Is that what this path is about?
Dhyana Yoga is the path of meditation and contemplation. It's about cultivating stillness.
That's stillness.
And awareness. Training the mind to become quiet and focused.
So it's about finding that inner sanctuary amidst all the chaos of everyday life. Learning to observe our thoughts and emotions. without getting swept away by them.
Precisely. Dhyana yoga is about accessing that deep inner peace that resides within us all.
Yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly popular in the West as people are discovering the benefits of mindfulness and meditation, for reducing stress, improving focus, cultivating inner peace.
It's like we're rediscovering these ancient practices.
We are.
And realizing that they have a lot to offer us in our modern lives.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think that these paths outlined in the Gita thousands of years ago are still relevant today.
They are.
But they also sound like pretty intense.
Right.
Is it realistic to think that we can actually incorporate these yogic paths into our busy modern lives?
Well, the beauty of these paths is that they're not rigid doctrines or exclusive clubs. They're more like guidelines for living a more conscious and fulfilling life.
Okay.
And while they originated in ancient India, they can be adapted to our modern context.
So we can take those core principles and like weave them into the fabric of our daily lives, finding ways to express those yogic values in our work, our relationships, our personal pursuits.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting?
What's that?
Is that even in our digital age, these ancient practices can be enhanced with modern tools.
You mean like mindfulness apps?
Exactly.
And online meditation courses?
Yeah, exactly. You know, these tools can be incredibly helpful for developing a consistent practice and connecting with a community of like-minded individuals. But it's important to remember that the core of these practices is about inner transformation. About cultivating awareness, compassion, and connection.
So it's not about relying on technology to do the work for us.
Exactly.
But about using it as a support system to deepen our practice and understanding.
Precisely.
Okay.
Technology can be a valuable tool, but it's the inner work that truly matters.
Right.
And speaking of inner work, the Gita also talks about rising to a higher consciousness.
Higher consciousness.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Well, the Gita describes 3 gunas, or qualities of nature that influence our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. These gunas are tamas. Rajas means
sattva.
Sattva.
Yeah.
Okay, break it down for me. What are these gunas all about?
Well, tamas is associated with inertia. Ignorance. And darkness.
Okay.
It's that feeling of being stuck, sluggish, or unmotivated.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right.
So what about rajas?
Rajas is characterized by passion, activity, and restlessness. It's that drive to achieve, to conquer. To be constantly on the move. You know, it can be a powerful force for creation. But it can also lead to anxiety, stress.
And burnout.
It's like that double-edged sword of ambition.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
It can propel us forward.
Yeah.
But also consume us. If we're not careful. So where does sattva fit into all this?
Sattva is the highest guna, representing purity, harmony, and wisdom. It's that state of clarity, balance, and peace.
So it's like moving from darkness to light.
Yes.
From chaos to clarity.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the Gita encourages us to rise above the low gunas of tamas and rajas and to cultivate sattva, that state of higher consciousness.
But how do we actually do that? How do we shift from feeling like stuck or frantic to experiencing that sense of peace and clarity?
It's a process of self-awareness and conscious choice. We can start by recognizing which guna is dominant in a given situation, and then consciously choosing to act from a higher state of awareness.
So if we're feeling overwhelmed and sluggish, that's Tamas taking over. And we need to find ways to energize ourselves and shift towards rajas.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if we're feeling anxious and scattered, that's Rajas running the show.
Okay.
And we need to find ways to calm the mind and connect with Sattva.
It's like we're learning to become the conductor of our own internal orchestra.
Exactly.
You know, harmonizing those different energies, bringing them into balance.
Yeah.
What does that higher consciousness look like in our everyday lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
You know, it can manifest as the ability to remain centered amidst challenges, to maintain compassion, even in the face of adversity, and to act with integrity.
Even when it's difficult.
Right.
You know, it's about responding to life's ups and downs with grace and wisdom, rather than reacting from a place of fear or ego.
It sounds like a recipe for a more peaceful and fulfilling life.
It is.
And it seems like these principles of higher consciousness could also be applied.
They could.
On a larger scale.
Yes.
You know, addressing some of the global issues we're facing today.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where leaders, policymakers, individuals alike, we're operating from a place of sattva, clarity, compassion, wisdom. You know, we would approach challenges with greater understanding, seeking solutions that benefit all beings, rather than just serving our own self-interests.
It's like we're being called to step into our roles as conscious co-creators of a more just compassionate
and sustainable world.
Right.
It's inspiring to think
it is
that the wisdom contained in the Gita, this ancient text, holds such profound implications.
It does.
For our individual lives and for the future of humanity.
It does. But let's be real.
Okay.
The ultimate goal of the Gita is moksha.
Moksha.
Liberation from that cycle of birth and death.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Is it like floating off into some blissful state of nothingness?
Right.
Moksha is often described as union with the divine. A state of complete liberation from suffering and the limitations of the material world.
Okay.
But it's not about escaping this world.
So it's not about becoming some kind of detached hermit living in a cave.
Not at all.
Okay.
You know, it's about understanding the true nature of reality.
Right.
Seeing through the illusions that bind us.
Okay.
And living with wisdom and purpose.
So it's about waking up to a deeper reality.
Yes.
And living in alignment with that truth.
It's about recognizing our true nature as this eternal consciousness and living from that place of awareness and freedom.
But how could we even begin to comprehend such a state?
Yeah.
Let alone achieve it.
Right.
It seems like a pretty lofty goal.
It is a lofty goal.
Yeah.
But it's not unattainable. You know, the Gita offers several paths to moksha.
Right.
But the core principles involve self-realization, detachment from material possessions, and surrender to the divine will.
Those are some pretty profound concepts.
They are.
How do they translate into practical terms?
Yeah.
You know, in our modern, often materialistic world.
It's about shifting our focus from external validation to internal fulfillment.
Internal fulfillment.
You know, it's about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from acquiring more things, but from cultivating inner peace and connecting with something larger than ourselves.
It sounds like a radical shift in perspective.
It is.
One that challenges many of our modern values.
It does.
But it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is.
So how do we actually start making that shift?
It's a journey.
Yeah.
A process of self-discovery and spiritual growth.
Okay.
The Gita encourages us to cultivate self-awareness, to practice detachment, and to develop this,
to act with compassion and wisdom, and to cultivate a sense of peace and purpose in our lives.
You've captured it beautifully.
Thanks.
You know, it's about embracing the journey, learning from our experiences, and striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
It's about realizing that the battlefield isn't just out there, it's within us.
Right.
And the ultimate victory is finding peace within ourselves.
Exactly.
It's a lot to ponder.
It is.
We've covered so much ground from consciousness and karma to these yogic paths and the ultimate goal of moksha.
Right.
it's clear that the Bhagavad Gita offers a wealth of wisdom.
It does.
But it's also a lot to digest.
It is.
So let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
To explore how you, our listener, can start incorporating these profound teachings into your own life. Okay, so we're back and ready to bring this all home.
Yeah.
We've been through this whirlwind of ideas.
We have.
From the Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
Consciousness, karma, these yogic paths, even the concept of liberation. Mm-hmm. But, it's one thing to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And another to actually live it. So for you listening out there,
right,
what are some practical ways to start incorporating this, ancient wisdom, into your modern life?
Oh, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
It is.
It can feel a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin
with
something as profound as the Bhagavad Gita?
Right. Yeah.
But remember, it's a journey.
Yeah.
Not a race.
Oh, yeah.
Even small steps can lead to big shifts.
Okay.
Over time.
So no need to quit your job and move to an ashram tomorrow.
Not unless that's your true calling.
Yeah, okay.
But seriously, I think a great starting point is to just reflect on which of those 4 paths we discussed resonates most with you right now.
Okay. Right.
Is it the selfless service of karma yoga, the devotional love of bhakti yoga, the intellectual pursuit of jnana yoga,
right,
or the stillness of dhyana yoga?
Okay.
The path of meditation.
It's like choosing a doorway into this vast world of spiritual practice.
Yeah.
But does it have to be just one?
No.
Can we mix and match?
Absolutely. These paths are all interconnected.
Right.
And they can beautifully complement each other.
Right.
The key is to find what feels authentic to you.
Right.
What sparks your curiosity.
Okay.
And inspires you to take action.
So it's about finding that personal connection, the spark that lights a fire within.
Exactly.
Rather than trying to force yourself into a box that doesn't quite fit.
Right.
Okay, once you've identified a path.
Yeah.
Or maybe a few elements that resonate.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Start small, be consistent. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight.
Right. Okay.
If you're drawn to karma yoga, look for opportunities to serve others in your community.
All right.
Maybe volunteer at a local organization,
right,
or just simply make an effort to be more helpful and kind in your daily interactions.
Small acts of kindness can
they do
ripple outward.
They do, exactly. And if bhakti yoga calls to you, explore different spiritual practices that cultivate devotion. Maybe that's chanting, singing devotional songs, spending time in nature, or simply cultivating a sense of gratitude for all the blessings in your life.
It's about finding ways to connect with that sense of awe and wonder.
Right.
That feeling of being part of something.
Yeah.
Much larger than ourselves.
Right.
Okay, and for the intellectual explorers out there who are drawn to Jnana yoga, what would you suggest?
Delve into the study of sacred texts or, engage in philosophical discussions.
Right.
There are so many resources available these days, books, online courses, podcasts that offer, insightful perspectives on the Gita and other spiritual teachings. You can also connect with like-minded individuals and engage in meaningful conversations about life's big questions.
It's about using our minds as tools for spiritual inquiry, not just for accumulating information.
Yeah, exactly.
But for deepening our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about Dhyana yoga?
Okay.
For someone who's new to meditation, where would they even begin?
Start with just a few minutes each day. Finding a quiet space where you can sit comfortably and focus on your breath.
Right.
There are tons of guided meditations available, online and through apps that can help you get started. But the key is to be patient and persistent. Not getting discouraged if your mind wanders. Just gently bring your attention back to your breath. again and again.
It's like training a puppy.
It is.
It takes time and patience to develop those muscles of focus and awareness.
Right.
It's so inspiring to think that these practices outlined in the Bhagavad Gita thousands of years ago are still so relevant and accessible to us today.
It speaks to the timeless wisdom of these teachings, doesn't it? They offer this path to inner peace and fulfillment that transcends time and culture.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
It is.
I encourage you, dear listener,
to
continue exploring the Bhagavad Gita. Read it, reflect on it, discuss it with others.
Right.
You might be surprised by what you discover within its pages. And remember, it's not just about reading the words, but embodying the teachings.
Exactly.
Bringing them to life in your thoughts, your words, your actions.
It's about integrating these principles into the fabric of your daily life, allowing them to guide your choices, your relationships, your interactions with the world.
Well, it's been an absolutely fascinating journey.
It has.
Exploring the Bhagavad Gita with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah.
For another adventure in knowledge and discovery.